Today's Sunday, and I'd like to introduce a new series I'm going to do on Sunday morning. It's going to be called Sunday Mornings, the room where it happened. So what we're going to do is I'm going to reminisce and think back to events that happened that I was in the room and see if you have any interest in this. So obviously, if you do, like and follow, and if you don't, or if you do, please tell me your comments, and so I can decide whether I should continue to do this or not. A long time ago, when I was a young broker, we weren't financial advisors then. I kind of learned what the future value of money was and how you figure it out. I was very proud of myself, and because in those days, remember, we didn't have machines, there was no internet. Our learning was hit or miss, and nothing like today. Individuals, FAs I work with, are so much better and more intelligent and more well-read than we were. It's ridiculous, okay? But anyway, so this all came about from takeovers in those days, or very few, but when they came out, I just didn't realize that there was actually a formula for figuring out where the price of the stock trades all the way up to the day of the takeover, okay? So once I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay. So I started looking at takeovers. So the first one that comes along, of course, just blows this theory right out of the water. I noticed that National Can is being taken over for around $35, $36 a share, somewhere in there, I forget now. And the stock was trading around 24, 25, 24 and a half, somewhere in there. Remember, we traded in quarter halves and 3/8 in those days, okay? And the takeover was like 10 days, 2 weeks away. And I was like, I don't need a formula to tell me that the stock price is way too low. So I look and I see that National Can is going to be taken over by a company called Triangle Incorporated. So I go back to the S&P tear sheets. Now in those days, we had one book of all the S&P stocks in a book, and you were supposed to copy it, your sheet that you wanted to look at, many, many times. People just tear them out, thereby we had the tear sheets, and eventually put them into 3-ring binders, and people still stole the sheets, okay? So anyway, I go back and I get Triangle, there's nothing there. There's no earnings, there's no assets, there's no business description. You flipped it over in the back, you go all the way down to the bottom, and there are 3 names and a telephone number. So I decided to call the telephone number and see what's going on. So as I'm dialing the number, probably rotary dial, I noticed that the 3 names were Nelson Peltz, Peter May, and some woman's name. So as the phone's ringing, this gentleman picks up and goes, Nelson Peltz. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I'm very sorry, sir. I'm looking for investor relations. And he goes, well, she just stepped out to pick up lunch, so what can I help you with? So I was like, are you taking over National Can? And he goes, yes, I am. I said, are you going to take it over, whatever it was, 10 days from now? He goes, yes, I am. And I said, so why is the stock trading so far away, using my intelligence, of course? And he goes, because no one believes I'm going to take it over. And I said, are you going to take it over? He says, yes, I am. I said, sir, I'm looking at the S&P tear sheet. I said, how are you going to do this? Do they not believe you're going to take it over because you don't have any money? And he goes, yes. And I said, but you're still going to take it over. He said, I'm still going to take it over. He says, listen, I want you to remember this name. I met this brilliant young man from New Jersey. His name is Michael Milken. Don't forget it, okay? And as we now know, 40 years later, Michael Milken invented the LBO. National Can was the first LBO, and he did take it over. and Triangle did, okay? And Triangle also took over American Can and all these other stuff. And basically, in the end, I forget what it was, but I know it was 80% of all the Coca-Cola cans they made, and somewhere around 40 to 60% of all the beer cans was in Triangle when they LBO'd all these companies, okay? Now, Triangle traded at $1 to $4 for like 2 or 3 years, and I had accumulated with my clientele a lot of shares, like I forget what it was, but 300, 400, 500,000 shares. Of course, it didn't go anywhere. Everyone sold it down, and then one day, Triangle was taken over by Pétionnet of France for $74 a share. Okay, and literally the day of the takeover, it was trading like $4.50. Okay. Now, Triangle, we all know as Treon, right? And Nelson Peltz and Peter May, probably one of the top 3 duo of takeover and managers of companies in the last 40, 50 years, for sure, okay? And so, you know, Nelson Peltz, he was there, and I was in the room. Like and follow, and let me know what you think.